Good afternoon, everybody.
Now I'm too short to actually sit in the chair.
So today we're going to be talking about how AI can help businesses become more efficient and help people collaborate better. And I think that each of the people on the stage are coming at that from a different and very interesting angle. So I guess first of all, I wanted to start by going around and having each of them explain what that term from the session title, connected intelligence, means in each of their businesses and each of their contexts. So Robin, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Robin Daniels. I am the Chief Business Officer at Zensai. We are an HR tech platform that's all about human success. And the way we think about connected intelligence is that when it comes down to it, an organization is just a group of people trying to do great things together. Sometimes those things are small and solve those small challenges. Sometimes those are really big. And what we're trying to do is, by having a platform that can ease the teamwork, the collaboration, the communication between team members, we can actually get much more efficient in an enterprise, because those are usually the issues that stop companies from doing great work. It's like those little interpersonal things, miscommunications, misunderstanding of goals, misunderstanding of where you're going. So we think of it as like, can we take the friction out of how teams and individuals collaborate together to do great work?
And May?
Yeah, so actually, how many of you already know TeamViewer, what it does? Great, thank you. So I really like the title because connectivity is the heart of what TeamViewer does. And what we have really been working on 20 years in business is working with our customers on this digital transformation journey. Right? From connectivity, I think that's at the core of it, to workflows, to Copilot, and now to autopilot, all the way to AI. So I'm really looking forward to this. Is a graveyard shift with lunch being served everywhere around you. Thank you very much for making it. I hope you find some insight into kind of the use cases and how we work with our customers and the return on investment that we're able to do.
Yeah, thanks, May. So my name's Greg Fallon. I'm the CEO of Geminus. We're coming at this panel a little bit different from my peers. So we deal with large cyber-physical infrastructure, things like power plants, oil refineries. And we think about connectivity in multiple ways. One is between the people and the machines. That's where we spend a lot of time. How do you help these human beings make these machines that are infinitely complicated run more efficiently or more productively? But then also, the people that run these machines also work in silos. These are teams of actually physical engineers, people that deal with engineering in the physical world, and they have multiple computational systems that are connected to each other. They have individual disciplines, and bringing those together is a huge factor in trying to make the overall industrial plant more efficient.
Great. I'm Dan Brown, not the author. And I'm from Celonis, and we provide a process intelligence tool. And so what that means is most companies have a number of systems. They do things, they store data, but almost always they don't really know how the company operates, how business processes work, how their interdependency happens. And so our technology allows you to infer that, and it allows you to infer what systems are doing the work, how information flows, who's working on stuff, how multiple processes interact. And so when we think about connectivity, we think about how those business processes come together to deliver value. And you can think about an example. If there's a customer order that is delayed, well, you want to ask the question, why? There are a lot of connections inside your company, and there's a lot of information that is outside that come together to explain that, and then ultimately to help that person who's picking up the phone or an agent that is responding go and help out that customer, maybe reroute, maybe explain the situation, maybe provide an alternative.
And then just to further set the stage a little bit here, because I know these terms can kind of get mixed up, how much of what each of you do is what we now call traditional machine learning, and how much is like generative AI, and like how are those two things working together? And this time, Dan, we'll start with you.
Okay, so traditional machine learning, it feels funny saying that already, and generative AI. So the answer is both, I think, and I would be surprised if most technology companies are not already have done quite a bit in machine learning, but are using Gen AI to augment that strategy. We do both. So we use traditional machine learning to provide insights on your process intelligence, understand the distribution of variation, understand predictions, throughput time, and so on. But we also use generative AI to put in the hands of human beings how things are happening, what might be a good way of responding. The other thing that I think is really interesting, and we're seeing this in agents, is those worlds are really coming together. You know, transformers, for example, have traditionally been for large language models, but they're actually being used for different types of tokens, you know, for using, you know, for example, activities to infer when things will happen. So I think that's going to continue to happen with large language and foundation models being intermixed or used for different use cases outside of just sort of an NLP interaction.
And Greg?
Yeah, so you know, I think when we talk about the mix of generative AI and machine learning, we do a lot of what I would call uncommon machine learning. So you know, most of the work that we do, because we're dealing with large machines, requires very high precision. And so what we think of as generative AI as this audience in terms of LLMs is something that we make use of, but more as an agentic approach to kind of enhance the human beings. But the real math gets done by a combination of machine learning algorithms and optimization routines, which on their own are generative because they're actually creating recommendations, control recommendations to these human beings. So I'd say it's a mix. I think in the hardcore industrial world where precision reigns, we're going to be a while before we can see generative AI in terms of LLM type technology emerge. But in the meantime, I think it offers loads of opportunities from an agentic perspective.
I guess I'm switching to this. Hopefully you can hear me. And I would say they are both useful. They're tools.
Yep.
Right, so I don't think you say this one wins on the other. It really depends on use cases. For us as well, we have a lot of machine learning, I'll say traditional, right? With structured data, semi-structured data, we use the more traditional techniques that are offering that AI capability. And that's been going on for the last 10 years at least. And the recent adoption of the large language model is first and foremost to analyze the multimodal text that we deal with, right? With a typical TeamViewer connection, you could be like an IT, right? So it's ASCII in nature, but then when we go into like a frontline support case, it becomes all of a sudden multimodal. It could be an audio call, video, CAD images, pictures, all of these things come. And the large language model is just so much more capable to be able to digest the information in a large quantity and also the variety. So far, right now, it's different use cases that are focused on either more the traditional semi-structured data versus the dialogue, the interfaces, etc.
And I think of it simply as machine learning is a fancy word for pattern recognition and pattern matching. It's like taking all these different data points, looking at it, and then coming up with an answer. And I think true AI is really pattern recognition plus creative thinking, where you actually add that layer of creative thinking to understand what's the sentiment behind something and come up with something that you hadn't actually expected would be the answer. So for example, if you have an employee, many of us have been C-level leaders here in this panel, and employees come and they say, I want to go this direction in my career. You kind of use your pattern recognition to say, based on what you're good at, you should go here. But that's different than if somebody comes to you and says, I feel like I could learn analytics because it would take my career to the next level. Or if they use the word, I should learn analytics to take my career to the next level. Those are two very different things, and you need the creative thinking of somebody who understands the nuance between those different things to come up with a better answer and solution for that. So I think one is just like a fancy word for pattern recognition, and the other is like that creative spark that gets added on top of it.
Got it. Yeah, and I mean, when you're designing AI tools for efficiency or collaboration by nature, you're going to have to design them for a lot of different roles, and it has to be usable by like HR departments or engineers or maybe like systems of record. I'm curious, like, how do you think about making a tool that like every different department or every different role can use, and like, is that more challenging? And May, why don't we start with you this time?
So AI still has to solve business problem at the end.
Really?
Yes, it's still, no matter how fancy it gets and how much hype it gets, at the end of the day, right, that return on investment and that specific use cases. So for us, it's working with the customers, identifying that. I can give an example. So we have, in the typical IT, right, so you know TeamViewer. So in the typical IT support cases, we would measure on first ticket resolution. We'll measure on how much time that you save in reducing the ticket documentation, right? How much time that you can capture the knowledge out of this so that you can use that to train the next new agent that's coming in, right? Or you go to taking the similar connectivity solution, when you go to an OT, like a more production setting, it's a very different set of return on investment discussions and efficiencies that they're looking for. In there, probably, so we have a picking solution using AR, VR solutions, and in there, error rate is really important to reduce, right? So the cost of the wrong things get shipped out is very high. So you define error rate, and you define, with labor shortage after COVID, to get the warehouse workers to coming in to be able to be productive right away, you define how many hours it takes to train them. Is it intuitive enough so that they can just put on the glasses, the AR glasses, and go? Right. So these are different use cases. What it boils down to, it's the same AI technology behind it.
Greg.
You want me to talk? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so we think about, again, the business problem and the efficiency. And in our world, there's kind of one thing that's really clear. I mean, we're all about increasing production rates. So it's pretty easy to, not easy, but it's relatively easy to measure. If you use AI to improve production of a power plant, you should be able to get more power out of the plant by spending less money or less carbon emissions. So that's one way, I think, that we think about efficiency and measurement. The intangibles are harder to measure. How do you measure what happens when you break down silos, right? So you change the process, you get people working together. AI bridges a gap. Are you looking at hiring fewer workers? In most of the cases that we've seen, no. In fact, a lot of what we're doing is seeing increased productivity from workers that used to be able to scale to like 2 people. These are experts, and now they can scale to thousands of people. And so we haven't figured out how to measure that yet. It's very, very difficult. It's kind of this type of thing where our customers see it when they believe it, and thank God for us, we have the industrial output that we can kind of pin a number on.
And Dan, what are you looking at to kind of measure the efficiency that you're creating?
Yeah, so I think you had asked a question about sort of designing, and then I'll make that go into, because I think it's really important when you're using any type of artificial intelligence, the semantics of what you feed it matter a great deal. If you leave out a certain signal, it's obviously not going to make a prediction or a classification based on that information, because it doesn't have it. So we talk a lot about process intelligence is what fuels artificial intelligence. And so when you understand what your company does, you have the semantics of what it actually does, then you can start to answer questions very well. So for example, why? That's what everybody wants to know. They want to know why something happens, and when they know why, then you can go change it. Or you can allow an agent to go change it. But now let me fast forward to how you actually measure things. And by the way, those semantics can be very broad. Most processes are measured on throughput time, efficiency, volume, and so on. Or they can be very narrow. If you're working in revenue marketing and you want to know how many leads are dropped, that's a very narrow, semantic. So I think you can do things that are broad and you can do things that are narrow. But just by way of examples, in a typical process, say on the purchase or order side, you can measure how many times they need to be handled by a human being. And once you measure that and you benchmark and you identify the variations where that happens, you can eliminate those. And you can measure. We have a really good example of a customer that did that. And essentially their sales order throughput grew by a factor of 5 by reducing human touch that was unnecessary. So that's immediately value creative, and it is absolutely economically measurable.
And Robin, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, sure. Taking the human angle again, when I think about my time at Salesforce or Box or LinkedIn at these different companies, I would say over 90% of my coaching or interactions with people have been on the soft skills, not so much the hard skills. And it's usually those soft skills that really get in the way of efficiency, great teamwork, great cultures, all those kind of things. And so we think about how do we use AI in some ways to coach people to be more empathetic, more compassionate, use the right language, use the right goals, use the right motivation, so you can actually get people to work well together towards a common outcome. So what does that mean? It sounds very, very lofty. So what we think about is, can we give people the nudges and insights on how their interactions are going to push them in a certain direction? Say, use these words instead of this word, learn this skill instead of this skill, but all, of course, in the service of reaching business outcomes, reaching the goals that you've set. So if you have the goal of getting from 5 million to 10 million in revenue, or you want to get into a new market, all of these here have to be in the service of better business outcomes. And so all the AI that we're putting into our platform and that we see in kind of our industry is about how do you push the humans and the teams to really kind of break down that friction to work really well together and get the right skills and so on. What we think about is that's been lacking for a long time is this notion of having visibility and insight into what is that actually, how do you measure it? How do you actually correlate that? You know, if you think about what chief customer officers care about, NRR, sales leaders care about ARR, finance leaders care about cash in bank or EBITDA. But when it comes to like how do you actually measure how people are doing and are they working well together, there's not really any way to measure it. And so I think we as a company and we as an industry are really focused heavily on like how do we actually use AI to give us now that visibility that gives us the knowledge into how we're doing so we can actually progress towards the goals that we've set as a company, and then take the friction out of getting there in a very, very like seamless way.
Got it. Yeah, and I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of the adoption curve of AI. And I guess one thing I'm curious to start the conversation is like, since ChatGPT kind of put generative AI front and center in like 2022, our business is on the whole operating much more efficiently than when they were then, or like how far into this adoption curve are we? Like, what are you guys seeing? And whoever wants to start can start.
Well, I saw some recent stats that were quite eye-opening. It said 86% of companies and workers feel like it's making them more productive, yet over 70% of people also feel like it's giving actually them more work because they have to check the outputs of all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. So it's like on one side, yes, on the other side, yes. And then you're also seeing another stat that I just thought was like mind-blowing, that over 70% of people say that it's leading to increased levels of anxiety and burnout because people feel like they have to do so much more. The pressure is there. So I think my take on this is like a lot of like conflicting numbers is that we're still kind of in the early days of figuring out exactly how this is going to net out. I mean, I think we're all optimists up here. We think that AI is going to be a superpower if you use it in the right way. But it's still honestly early days and like really figuring out how to harness this because it's like pockets of it. Marketing's doing this, finance is doing this, sales is doing this, customer support and so on. But is it like cohesive? Is it centralized? Do we have one full purview on it? We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet, I don't think.
I agree. I think in terms of the adoption, different industries, different use cases, they will see differently when the human, how threatened they feel. I think maybe some studies also say that the executives feels more excited about it than the actual people working on it. That's how they feel. And so for us, knowledge worker, I think there's a big divide between knowledge workers and the deskless job, like the frontline workers. 80% of the world's positions are actually in deskless jobs, right? We're lucky to be kind of, the knowledge worker part, but we only represent about 20% of the workforce. And 60% of that actually happen in APAC regions. And when you think of the scale of the potential impact from digital transformation and from being able to take large quantity of data, I think, you're working with in large factory settings, it's early in its adoption. I think we still have to come through quite a bit of change management on processes, on skills, and on the technology to be able to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you as well. I mean, the only thing I'll say is that like not only are we early, we are like super early, right? I mean, we're talking about adoption. Okay, so maybe most employees are using generative AI of some sort in their daily workflows, but what are the use cases? Like I think use case discovery is so early, and we don't know whether we're proliferating 1 million applications or they're going to consolidate. Our company is going to make their own applications. Are they going to buy them from someone else? I mean, it's exciting, and we are like so in the hype curve right now, and we're probably still early in the hype curve as well. At some point, people are going to stop talking about AI, and at that point, I think we'll know that it's actually starting to catch on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on that last point and then add something else that we've noticed. But I think a lot of times, customers are already using AI and they don't know it. I mean, just you look at, when you're writing something and your document, fills in something for you. But to me, that's a great point. That's when we know we've arrived, when it just feels seamless. But one thing that we've noticed, we tend to focus on large enterprise companies. There is a very big appetite to explore use cases and the adoption of technology. Everybody's talking about Gen AI, everybody's talking about agents. There's a lot of, I'm not really sure how to apply this. I completely agree with you. It's like, what's the use case? What's the outcome we can get? But I love the fact that it doesn't matter whether you're a manufacturing company, you're agro, you're in med tech, or the public care. You're interested in this technology and how it can improve what you're doing, improve your outcomes, and improve your business for your customers. And I'll give you an example of how we've seen this play out, because I think this model is probably one we'll see more. We have a company that was really interested in why blocks were happening and how they could expedite those on order processing. And this seems like sort of very basic, right? Like there's no rocket science here, but if you can get rid of that problem, you can, there's a bottleneck there that you can unplug. So what they've done is understood the root cause by getting this process intelligence information and then using an assistant based on an LLM to summarize that problem and then also provide alternatives for action. And so this is a human-in-the-loop agent that will show up in some collab tool and then help that individual, that human being, to go and make a choice and make a change. Mm-hmm. At some point, that's going to move to something that is automated, and the amount of human in the loop you would expect to go down and down, freeing up that individual to do higher touch things that are more value creative than just, hey, I want to get rid of this credit block because we shouldn't have had it. So I think the evolution is going to be, let's try. We're eager. We want, by the way, every company on the planet, their boards are asking them, I mean, you all know this from your boards, what's your Gen AI story and tell me how much you're going to save? So we all know that this is happening. Everybody's got the pressure. The curiosity is there. And I think people understand incremental development and incremental rollout. And I think we're going to go from playing around to human in the loop to some subset that is fully automated and go from there.
I have a confession to make. My name is Robin Daniels, and I suffer from AI FOMO. It's real. When you look online and you read articles, you just feel like you're constantly behind on AI. It's like just mind-blowing, especially on LinkedIn and X, and you're like, oh my God, all these people are doing amazing things with AI all the time. Last week, I was at an AI go-to-market conference with about 150 go-to-market leaders, sales, marketing, customer success officers from like elite tech companies. And they're all feeling this way. Everyone feels behind, right? And so we went around the room and kind of everyone lifted their hand and said, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And everyone gave themselves a 2, 3, maybe a 4. I think everyone feels a little bit behind on this adoption curve. You're seeing pockets of it, but there's not really any great organizing strategy yet around this in companies. So, but stay curious, stay hungry, keep looking at it. That's the takeaway.
I'll make a quote here that I think is super relevant. Benioff, I love this quote. He said, people dramatically overestimate what you can do in a year and dramatically underestimate what you can do in 10. You know this from your Salesforce. I think that is absolutely the case here.
Yeah, how do you deal with that sense of FOMO and that pressure from above? And like, how do you make sure you're focused on things that actually matter?
Just gotta like meditate, breathe, chill a little bit, because it's definitely real. If you feel like you're always behind, I think you just gotta stay curious. You gotta like consistently lean into what you can do in terms of finding new tools. So at our company, in one way we've dealt with it is we've created kind of an AI council, and we have like an AR SAR who is our go-to person for helping us across the company get much better at using AI. Because we certainly have it in pockets, but I also think you're going to get a lot of shadow AI popping up everywhere, just like we saw with shadow IT many, many years ago. You're going to see the same with AI. So having kind of an organizing principle, somebody who has the full purview across all your different business processes is what we're in the early stages of doing at our company. And I'm seeing more and more thinking about how do we have an AI project manager, organizer, somebody who's actually looking across versus all these different groups just kind of doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's best way is just roll up your sleeve and do, right? Maybe it's a very small step in the beginning, but the moment you feel like you are doing something, you feel more in control. Yeah. And then maybe the next incremental development is not going to be as hard. And creating that AI, I would say a safe, right, for employees to try, safe for them to feel it's okay to fail, it's okay to do something and it doesn't quite work. To have that framework, have that culture is important. Otherwise, I don't think this will ever work top down. No. Yeah. Even though top-down right now asking a lot of questions, what you really need is people all feel that they're empowered. They're not even thinking about they're using AI or not before they will be adopted.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, the idea of kind of empowering everybody. I mean, there is no single human being that is possibly able to stay on top of this. I mean, this is a perfect application for agentic AI yes, exactly. To tell us exactly what we should be doing at any given moment. To stay on top of AI, but I'm seeing this in more and more organizations. There'll be a centralized approach, which you have to have so that you can have some sort of governance and have things boil up to the top. But you have people showing up in every group who just have an inherent interest in staying on top of it, and they're influencing their colleagues, and that's what I get excited about because it's those little pods of human beings that are coming up with new ways, new use cases. And proliferating information. And so one of the things that I've realized is that as an introvert, I have to spend more time talking to other people, even though I love the agent. But
there's a product for that, There is. I have one of my team members here, Reagan. So I just created a digital clone of myself. I took all the art. I write a lot, and I'm on a lot of podcasts, a lot of videos. So I took all the content, put it into a digital clone, so now people can just talk to me and ask me questions. They'll come back with pretty 90+% accurate answers of what I would say in that given situation. So you can scale yourself.
Can you learn?
Yes, of course.
All right, I love it.
So May, you mentioned earlier that some research that maybe executives are a little bit more excited about AI than some of the workers below them. I'm curious, you work a lot on upskilling, Robin.
Yes.
Is that something that you find as well, and how do you deal with that?
So say that question again. Yeah.
So, do you find that the enthusiasm is higher at the top than other workers, and how do you deal with that when you're working on upskilling?
I think it's high at the top and high at the very junior employees. I think it's the middle that's getting squeezed a little bit more. So I think if you're new into the workforce, you're kind of AI native in many ways. And they're just naturals with AI tools. Very impressive to see. And then there's a lot of enthusiasm at the top to the points that everyone has made here because the board wants it, shareholders want it, everyone kind of wants to get more efficient, better at kind of predicting outcomes. But I think it's the middle that's feeling the pressure, how do I use it? If you're a middle manager, you're getting probably pressure to get more efficient, do more with less, all the kind of classic stuff. And you're not quite sure exactly how to do that, I think. So we have to empower, enable them in many ways. Give them the confidence and tools that we're standing by, but also letting them know that it's early days, that we trust them to figure it out, but also don't be complacent. Push them in a certain direction to get more efficient and learn the right skills.
Got it.
Yeah, I can add to that. I mean, one of the sort of tried and true methods of helping a company out is to make the stakeholders successful. Once you make the stakeholders successful and the middle managers are often the ones, they can go talk to the people that are putting pressure on them. And so just to connect the two things that you both talked about, I think getting started, it seems it's a very hackneyed statement, but we have an AI lab. It's essentially a product and go-to-market joint effort. We go out and do, we used to call this joint application development. I'm sure most of your teams do this in some shape or form, but really working with the customers to identify where AI can be useful and then try it out. And ultimately get it out in the wild, because I think you can put numbers on a spreadsheet, you can prepare a presentation, you can do a board deck or whatever justification you need to make to whatever stakeholder. But I think when you have legitimate value creating use cases that a customer is doing, that's the magic. And so to me, that's when I look around here and go, gosh, I don't know, half these companies, more. What I do know is we're working very closely with customers with whatever technology we're aware of or can add, and we're trying to create value every day. And that is really exciting.
I think that's also what employees, right? Going back to yours,
Totally.
I think employees at the end of the day
Yeah.
want to see what they develop being adopted.
That's
I think ultimately a developer's best accomplishment is I have 1 million users of this feature, right? So when you put that perspective on, they sometimes feel this burden that I need to define the perfect thing, right? To be fulfilling that expectation, while everybody is really just experimenting,
Totally.
right? Figuring out which one sticks. I think so start, not be afraid of taking whatever that is co-innovation, a lab to the customer. Get the validation. I bet you if that customer validated this idea, another idea will come next week. Right? I think the employees will upskill themselves rather than go, you know what, you need to go away 3 weeks thinking about this, give me a perfect thing.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen.
And Greg, you probably have a unique perspective here working with industrial giants that kind of maybe haven't thought about AI as much as before. How do you kind of think about upskilling there?
Well, oddly enough, they're hyper focused on it.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing in the customers is there is a huge push on AI, and actually it's in industries that I wouldn't expect to be doing this. Some of the more connected, sophisticated industries, I'm not seeing do this as much, but it could be because they're more mature and it's just not as visible. But a lot of what we would consider dirty tech, people that have very old assets and machines are really pushing AI in big levels. They're trying to figure it out, and they're moving forward. And it's very hard for these companies that tend to be extremely, profit focused, to make a decision to do this. And so the better ones have carved out AI teams that are given permission to go off and experiment and develop applications. We, of course, try to come in and be able to show kind of hard numbers for what we do. But
I think the margin is so thin on the more traditional manufacturing, and they are looking for that edge. They probably don't think of AI. They're probably thinking of that margin and whatever the goals that they have, right? So we have a customer that they ship their machine, they're Swiss-based. They ship their machine to Asia Pac, where most of the manufacturing happens. That use their machine, and they're able to use this remote connectivity technology without traveling at all. 80% of that questions on the how to operate the machine. I have an issue with this machine, etc. Right? So production downtime is so huge for these manufacturers in Asia. And so they have a strict SLA. This particular OEM vendor needs to stick with. That's all they really care about. How do I stick with the SLA without traveling? Because traveling from Switzerland to Malaysia is going to cost time. And how do I reduce that downtime? And so they're looking all over the place, right? Looking for AI, machine learning, AR, VR technology, whatever works for them. I think it's for vendors, right? To offer that very concrete demonstration of return on investment for them.
And we've touched on agents now, I think, a couple times throughout the conversation, but it's something that a lot of people are very excited about, and a lot of people have different definitions of. But I'm curious, how each of you are thinking about agents and the future of agents and where you find them most useful. Dan, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think, I sort of mentioned this a little bit earlier where agents, are going to be, human in the loop. That's kind of what we're seeing today, where an agent will inform a human to go take action, and then the next logical step is for an agent to do that work. We're starting to see interest in agents that orchestrate multiple agents, and you can see that as a bi-directional thing. So an agent can be orchestrating, or an agent can be, told what to do by another agent. So I think that's something that we'll see. There's, as you're probably aware, immense amount of investment in this to make agents more intelligent. I mean, just by way of an example, if you want an agent to reroute a shipment because it's delayed, that agent probably needs to understand things like just something trivial like the weather. So, when you have domain-specific LLMs that can provide that kind of information, all of a sudden you're empowering an agent to do much more sophisticated things. I think the other thing about agents that people are really interested in is, okay, great, this agent is going to go do some work for us, double thumbs up. Is it effective? Like, did I actually get, so you have to feed that back in and measure that outcome and what that value creation. Another thing is that people are a little bit scared of just handing over, the wheels to an agent, not to use the car analogy too much, but, how do you do that? How do you test that out? What do you do if there's an exception? What do you do if it's wrong? Who's responsible? So I think those things are very evident in orchestration and agentic AI, and they're like, that's the cutting edge right now of what people are trying out.
Anybody else want to go?
I'll just jump on that as well. So the concept that I'm getting most excited about is agents controlling agents. This is one of the trends that I think is going to really start to take off because to your point, there's this idea that each agent needs to be specialized rather than trading some monolithic model, and it's much more efficient to have them connect. It also becomes incredibly complex. You have this like systems engineering problem where you're trying to make sure that you're managing them or that they're talking to each other appropriately. The other thing that I like about the agent of agent process is from an agent management perspective, it's much easier to disaggregate the problem and look at them individually. Yep. Are they doing what you asked? Are they getting better? Is there a fault? So this whole idea of quality control and then possibly retraining when you need to.
Yep. Agreed.
I have maybe a slightly different take on agent. We spend a lot of time on automation. So for me, automation is not autonomous, and agent is more autonomous. Agent can not only, when you have a prescribed set of complex things, just go do, and do it fast, do it efficient. It's also about discovering what problem you need to solve and apply whatever it takes, right? All in the context, I think, of human, machine. I love the bot of the bots, right? The super agents of the agent concept. But it's also, I think, going forward, it's this conference is Human X, right? So I think it's also this seamless interaction between human and machines, right? So that we don't really say versus, right? It's more using the and. Can we have more of that? Be thinking more like us, right? But helping us taking some of that mundaneness out. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I think in the future, all of us are going to have an army of agents just working on our behalf. I don't think it's going to replace everything, but it's certainly going to get us a lot of great answers or maybe some new thinking and new direction that we could go. We're already seeing it. For example, I have somebody on my team who runs product marketing, and for the longest time, we've been talking about hiring somebody to do competitive intelligence, which is very hard to do in most companies because keeping on top of what competitors are doing, figuring out your vectors, you are different and all that stuff, super complex, and you have to really kind of focus on this 24/7. Now with AI, you can do this really well. You can create an agent that just goes out and says, oh, they've changed their price list, their new feature set. They've now said, customers saying this on G2, pulling together and giving you the information so you can actually action it. Now we don't need to hire that person anymore. But you still have to do some work. There's still work involved in checking, verifying, making sure that it's accurate and so on. But it can certainly get you a big part of the way. You'll have agents doing this all the time, I think, for ICP, for customers, for fundraising, for all kinds of things.
Great. Well, we just have a few minutes left now, but maybe we can end on just one big prediction or one closing thought about what a kind of an upcoming trend in the next year that's like impacting each of your areas. And whoever wants to start.
I can go. And so for us, we see every workplace to be a digital workplace. And this is needless to say, right? With knowledge workers, absolutely, it's already digitized majority of the way. And I see this, I mentioned that 80% of our workforce is actually in deskless positions, and they are quickly becoming a digital workplace as well. Right, so really providing these, I would say, more mature solutions, right? Thinking out of the box of how that can also be applied to that deskless frontline workers. I think that is the challenge we're working with, and I'm hopefully, many of the innovators at this conference also thinking about beyond knowledge workers, how we can get the rest of the workforce also.
So one thing that I think is going to become more prominent is this notion of sequential decision making. Each enterprise, every day, there are choices that are made. Like one of the problems in traditional machine learning is the world is not stable. So what a model is trained on today is not, in fact, what the world looks like tomorrow. So how do agents or machine learning and the semantics, and from our perspective, that's process intelligence, how does that facilitate decision after decision after decision? Whether that's, that dynamic behavior is injected into an agent and then that orchestrates a bunch of agents, or it's human in the loop, it doesn't really matter. So I think that's I don't know if that's in the next year, probably not, but it's definitely something that we think about a lot. The second is, think about adopting AI in your company right now. That is a fundamental, I'll call it a business process change or a change of behavior. Obviously, that's a very broad definition. How do you go instrument that? How do you go take that through? If you want your NPS score to go up 5 points, what are you doing differently, and how do you get the lead indicators? If it doesn't happen, how do you answer the question why? It is the process of process reengineering or the process of improvement. Are agents going to help us with that? I don't know the answer to that, but that to me is ultimately where you want your intelligence to be focused on.
I'll just play on one thing that you just said that I think is going to become really important. I don't know if it's the next year or 2 years, but we have ML ops, and we talk about model updating. AI ops is going to be like the major thing, and it's a big field. It means so many things. We were talking in the background about like human resources changing, and human resources are going to have to oversee agents.
Yeah.
But this whole idea of AI ops and how that builds into ethics, testing, validation.
Yep.
Deployment, I think is going to be massive.
Yeah, and just finally, I think we're still probably 3 to 5 years out from seeing companies being fully AI-fied from end to end. But I think in the next year, I think every single employee, knowledge worker, have to have a killer use case where they're using AI, or they probably won't last long in their job because AI is coming. You have to embrace it.
All right. And with that, I want to thank you all for this great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.